Good morning this Monday morning. My old mother used to say to me, Jackie boy, when you go on the telly on a Monday morning, always have your jacket fastened up and your collar neatly tied so people can see how smart you can sometimes look. But more seriously this morning, if you live in Burnaby, Richmond, Delta, you can vote today from now until, what's the time, 8 o'clock tonight. So even if you just know the names of the candidates, get out and vote. Now, that's my public duty. For the program this morning, we're going to start with a man I've known for 30 years, through thick and thin, you might say, through troubles and notoriety and charges and counter-charges and fights with authority. None other than the Joe Philliponi. Second part of the program is going to feature media incest, my old friend Patrick Watson.
What about this million unemployed? How many of those people, compared to 40 years ago, are really suffering from being unemployed? How many of them are in families where there are 3 or 4 breadwinners? We know that that's a large part of the story, but the damn press keeps going on saying worst unemployment statistics since the Depression.
But first, a good hard look at Philliponi, his plans, his problems, his troubles, and his future.
You're coming to him right away, right? Say a few words, Mr. Philliponi, please.
Now's the time for all good men to come to the aid of the party. What would you?
That's great. Jack, would you say something to that, please?
Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of the party. Which camera am I opening on?
Ten seconds. What's his cue?
I'll give him a cue. Roll it 10 seconds from the top.
10 seconds from the top.
Joe Philliponi, the Joe Philliponi, is not an easy man to interview. But if you haven't seen enough of him in film, let's have a look at some of his activities recently. You know, while he's been through all kinds of troubles, court cases, charges, trials, and he has beaten the lot. There is no doubt about that. The conspiracy to live off the avails finally was destroyed by the courts of the land. The bribery thing was again finally destroyed by the courts of the land. And now Joe's involved in a great kerfuffle over what kind of license he's going to have to run the celebrated Penthouse Cabaret, which has had at least $10 million worth of publicity in the last 3 years of all the various trials. How does Joe respond to all this? What kind of man is Joe Philliponi? Where does he come from? Does he feel like an enemy of society? Joseph.
Jack, I heard your remark there say that we beat all these charges.
Right.
And all that. Well, you know why we beat them, don't you?
Why did you beat them?
Because all those allegations were false, were all untruths, and it was proven so in court. We won all those cases, not on technicalities, but on the facts as they presented.
Well, now, if I were one of the embarrassed members of the Crown in British Columbia from the Attorney General down, who spent $1.5 million to try to nail you, I would respond very stuffily, you're not quite right, Mr. Philliponi. What happened was that we did not have sufficient evidence to maintain the charges. It's a different way of saying the same thing, isn't it?
No, there's not a different way. When you lay a charge, you're supposed to have proof, facts, before to present to the court.
But many people are charged and acquitted.
They're charged and acquitted because why? Because either on technicalities or because the facts were not right.
Yeah, well, you were charged, convicted, and then you beat it all on appeal, roughly speaking, didn't you?
We certainly did on the facts.
So the first time round, a judge thought there was enough to convict you.
The trial judge, as an appeal court judges stated in the reasons, said that the prosecutor, and this is the first time this was said, kept on harping so much on control and so on and so forth of different things that did not apply, that he finally, this is what the appeal court judges said. The judge finally was twisting things around himself, got himself twisted around. And that is the findings of the Court of Appeal judges.
I don't argue the point, Joe, that you were charged after a massive investigation and that you beat the charges, that you were an innocent man, and that you have a clean record.
Their investigations definitely proved, as cited here by a report signed by Staff Sergeant R.C. Creech and Sergeant H.A. Petrie, this report right here, who they submitted to their superior officer, who at that time happened to be Inspector Lake. In their own words, it says here, it says, "We have contacted the Liquor Control Board and have been advised they will take no action unless the club management is charged and convicted of criminal offenses. Up to the present time, there's no evidence to indicate that the management of the Penthouse is guilty of any criminal offenses."
Now, let me see that, Joe. I didn't want to get involved in this detail this early, but what you're quoting from is a memo dated February 26, 1975, to Inspector Lake from the Morality Squad.
That is correct.
Yeah, but just one moment before you get into that. Up till that time, there were no evidence to indicate that the management of the Penthouse is guilty of any criminal offences.
That is correct.
But let's keep this simple and off the detail of the charges just for the moment. Let's look at it this way. Am I not right, from a common sense point of view, in saying that the Philliponi trials, the celebrity enterprises trials, established what you might say some quite clear precedents in law?
Not so.
You know what I'm getting at?
Yes, I realize what you're getting at.
I'm getting at the point that you and your colleagues were not to be blamed or convicted because people of certain reputations, to wit prostitutes, were using your place from time to time. And was it not established clearly that the ownership of such a place could not be convicted of conspiracy to live off the avails?
No more than Safeway stores can be convicted for prostitutes going in there buying groceries.
Look, I'll make that point for you. In other words, you say that a prostitute who goes into SuperValu or Safeway or Woodward's or anywhere else and spends her money there or spends her time there is no more a person living off their avails than you were.
That is correct.
Now, is that not a fact that your case cleaned up that law?
Well, no, the case was right there. It was never bad. Well, it did. It did that way because that law is put there for living on the avails of prostitution by making money from a prostitute. But that is, not in relation to where a business caters to these people in that respect. It means the ordinary pimp, if you're living off the avails of prostitution, that's what it's meant there for.
It's meant for pimps, people who procure the services of women for others.
That is correct. None of a plumber goes and fixes her sink.
That's right.
That he pays her because she's a prostitute. That does not mean that he's living off the avails of prostitution.
Look, you ran that place in Vancouver under the old Eagle Time delivery and under the Penthouse Cabaret from what year?
From right after I got out of the Air Force in 1946.
How many police investigations were there in the old days of McMorrin, and who was then the chief prosecutor, and all the police chiefs we had? How many?
How many days are there in a year?
365.
There'll be 365 visits.
You were never previously charged at all?
Only in the fact of allowing liquor to be consumed in a public place. Technical charge, that is. You're responsible if someone...
I remember that. That was in the good old days of the brown paper bag.
The bottle, which we fought for 15 years under the...
The bottle under the table.
Yes, that's correct.
Look, Joe, why? What year were you charged? 76? 75?
75.
Why were you suddenly charged in 75? What do you think brought that about? I've got my own opinions of it, but I want you to tell me what you think. Just broadly speaking, no names.
Well, I think that, as the report there stated, that the license department, I do know that for a fact, refused to act on the advice of the police. This was a conspiracy. And so they had a series of meetings, and in cooperation with the three bodies, that's the city police, the liquor administration branch, and the Attorney General's department, they also had, they figured out, well, lay the charges and we'll take away their license.
Well, I'm inclined to believe that when the NDP were in, that they had decided your place was a public nuisance and they wanted to close it. Would you agree with me on that?
Well, I do not agree it was a public nuisance because I'll tell you why. How could a place be a public nuisance when never once have they got on record that we had to call the police.
I'm not saying, I'm saying that they thought it was a public nuisance, that it annoyed certain people that Philliponi was still operating in what seemed to be an unsavory manner, and they thought, let's charge him.
Well, so were other places
Agreed.
operating in the same manner.
So we're agreed on that. And that decision, which may well have been political, cost the taxpayer $1.5 million.
They sure did, without them having any evidence whatsoever. They went through with that.
Hold your breath, Joe.
They kept on bringing evidence even after you're in the middle of the trial.
Hold your breath, Joe. I've got a lot more to ask you about. The Crown case against you, Joe, cost about $1.5 million. I want you to open up your heart and your bank book. How much did your legal fees cost you? I mean, you don't keep these kind of things secret.
No, definitely
You
not.
had some of the best lawyers in the country.
Definitely not. But what it cost us was I haven't got all the bills yet, but
150,000, 200,000?
You're pretty close.
And how much revenue did you lose over the 3 years?
Not only revenue, what we lost in gross revenue, that is, we were doing about $1 million a year. It's 3 years figured out
So you're $3 million down on that one.
in gross revenue.
Now, did you honestly expect, the moment you were acquitted of both sets of charges, that Mayor, he's the guy responsible, would come forward and say, okay, Joe, all is forgiven, we're very sorry about it, we shouldn't have charged you, here's your cabaret license back.
I sincerely felt that, and the way that I read his quotes in the paper repeatedly was that he was giving us full support on that. As a matter of fact, I have one here. Here's a news bulletin that says, looks like the Penthouse Cabaret will get its liquor license back. Consumer Corporate Affairs Minister Rafe Mayer says he won't make any moral judgments when the application comes before him.
All right, now just hold that there. I remember that quite well. In fact, of course, your first application went to the City Council for a business license.
That is correct.
And did they give you it back right away?
Now, to give us back right away, they started giving us a hassle.
Secret meetings?
A secret meeting that they had in camera. We took the matter before the Supreme Court of British Columbia, before Justice Webster, and he ordered an open hearing.
Public meeting on it.
A public meeting on it, which was scheduled and heard. But to our surprise, all those allegations that were supposed to be, not one whim, not one allegation. No one was up there to talk against it.
When you finally came up for the quasi-judicial hearing in public, nobody said we'd want to refuse the license. So therefore,
Well, give a reason why.
in the secret meeting, Volrich and Council had it in for you regardless, didn't they?
They were just, my estimation is that their minds got poisoned by the city police again.
So finally, who gave you what license you've got now? Woodland, the liquor administrator.
Well, we have the Woodland is...
You got your city license.
We have our city license.
Now, what about your license for booze and cabaret?
We haven't got that yet.
What have they said they will give you?
The restaurant, Class B restaurant license.
How many drinking places would you have in the Penthouse with the Class B?
How many drinking places?
What kind of license would it be?
Well, it's like a restaurant license. You must have food if you want liquor.
So all you would have would be a small holding bar, and you'd serve meals.
That is correct.
And
meals would be the primary concern.
What proportion of food would you have to sell to maintain your liquor?
At least 40% must be food.
So you've got to sell $4 worth of food for every $6 worth of liquor.
That is correct. Well, before, we enjoyed that you could drop in there and just have a cocktail, look at entertainment, with admission or without admission.
Chat up a couple of the girls.
Charge up, no, you...
Chat up. I didn't say charge up. I said chat up.
I didn't get that.
Chat up a couple of the girls.
Chat up.
What's the word? Make time with a couple of girls.
Well, that's up to yourself. You've got a big conversation.
Can you run the Penthouse on a Class B food license?
Well, we...
restaurant license?
Unlike most of the cabarets in the city, our place really sold food, and we did sell to 40% of food.
Can you run like that, though?
Yes, if we had to, but then why should we want our old license back?
Well, Mr. Mayor has announced, has he not, or somebody has, you'll correct me, that the reason you can't get your full cabaret license back is because, after all, there is a moratorium on cabaret licenses.
Well, in as far as my investigation is concerned in this moratorium, it's all been a dream-up of the administration board. Here's a letter here, which is under the signature of V.C. Woodland, which stated at the present time there's a moratorium on the issuance of cabaret license in the city of Vancouver, which has been endorsed by the city council. That is not true. City council did not endorse the moratorium.
At the present time, there is a moratorium on the issuance of cabaret licenses in the city of Vancouver endorsed by the city council. You say that's not true.
I challenge Mr. Woodland there on that thing right there.
You've spoken to him about that?
No, I have not.
You're challenging him now?
I'm challenging him now that the city of Vancouver did not put a moratorium.
Well, you would agree with the next paragraph, though, that there are more cabarets than are economically viable. The number of bankruptcies of such licensed premises, this is witnessed by the weekly number of bankruptcies.
That is quite not right at all. There's not. As a matter of fact, here's two examples I'll give you. I'll give you one right opposite where your office used to be on Cordova Street. Just a couple of weeks ago, that place there was sold for $150,000.
Which place was that?
They called it Fingers upstairs, right opposite from the garage there.
Oh, yes.
And now that for $150,000 dead. There was no, but because of the license value. The Circus on Granville Street, he bought it last year for $20,000. 2 weeks ago, he sold it for $225,000.
Joe, you stagger me. I thought we had brought in a system after all the old fiddles whereby these licenses had no value.
Well, I'm giving you two examples. $225,000.
Do you remember all the caper we had about licenses?
That's exactly.
And whereby liquor licenses had to have no value at all?
It's coming back to the old beer parlor days with it's the license you're buying.
Well, who's your enemy now? Is it Mayor or is it Woodland or is it Volridge?
I only met Mr. Woodland once. I always had high esteem for him and held him in regard. But some of the statements that have been coming through the press, whether correct or incorrect, I'm only going by them.
What does all this mean, Joe? Well, I tell you what I think it means. I think it means that despite the fact you beat the conspiracy and you beat that ill-advised charge of bribery which was laid against you, you destroyed that charge, that your public image in the years past and during this trial is such that people like Volridge or Mayor, a good social credit fellow, he's going to be here tomorrow morning, will not touch you with a barge pole. That's what I think it means. Now, whether that's just or not, don't you agree that that's what it means?
Well, I think so myself, because I've lived in the city since 1921, and I never done anybody any harm or ever got myself mixed up with any rackets or anything at all in that respect.
Well, a little bit of liquor here and there.
There's no liquor as far as... They were drinking liquor in my place, yes. But I was never charged with bootlegging, selling liquor.
You've been supplying a necessary public service.
I have, according to the rules at the time. And all we want, that's all I want, is an opportunity to carry on in a legal manner. I'm not the guard of public morals.
No, you have a good point there. You are not, in fact, there have been places, and I'll say this quite bluntly to your face, places operating in Vancouver since you were charged, which were revoltingly repulsive compared to your place with a few girls flitting around.
Well, I'm not mentioning what, but...
Don't mention any of them. In fact, don't mention anything for the moment, because shortly we're going to go to the telephones, too, with Joe Philliponi.
I've got it.
As far as I'm concerned, Joe, news stories are where I find them. And what you told me something which I regard as quite explosive this morning. That we're back at the old business of selling liquor licenses for profit, trading in liquor licenses, right?
Obviously so. That's what's going to happen if they put moratorium on these licenses.
Just like You're dead on. The moratorium puts up the value.
That's exactly the same as taxi cabs.
Just like the old beer parlor caper.
Yeah, that's right. You used to buy a license at the hotel.
And that led to all kinds of problems and troubles.
That is correct.
As we both know.
We both know because we've been here. We saw it.
We certainly did. Now, the situation as of now, you've got your restaurant license. When, have you actually been given the restaurant license yet?
Not yet, no. They said they would consider our application.
Have you applied yet?
Yes, we have about 10 days ago.
Because you'll take that as the first step.
We will, yes.
Now, in your situation in the Penthouse, you don't want to buy any license from anybody. You want your original license back.
We're entitled to that license. It was arbitrarily taken away from us under a certain section that not even mayor can explain that section.
Well, first of all, is it not a fact that your city license, no, your license was taken away first, your liquor license?
Yes, the 22nd, the day that the charges were laid, the same day a wire come through from the liquor board advising that our license is through.
Okay, now when was your city business license lifted?
On the 29th.
7 days later?
7 days later.
Took that long for the memo to get up to City Hall?
That's right. Say because of the charges, it said in the letter.
Well, you know, as I said, your image is not the best in the world, whether you like that, Joe, or whether you lump it.
Well, as long as you talk about me, it's fine and dandy. Keep on talking about me.
But the fact remains that having been acquitted, you should have got your license back.
That is what we feel, sincerely.
And I'll support it. Mind you, I wouldn't like my own 17-year-old daughter to hang around the old Penthouse.
Well, I can't see where she'd be safer there, thicker than on the street.
Talking about the streets, this, apart from the Deborah Hutt case on hookers, you know, where soliciting must be persistent, you were blamed for flooding the streets with hookers when your place was closed down. You know that, don't you?
Well, that's what they blamed. But
was that true?
No, it could be true because I don't know too many of those girls, but I looked around, seen them on the street, and out of 20, I would only recognize one.
20 to 1?
Yes.
But you were blamed.
Well, so they say.
When they closed your place down.
I'm blamed for a lot of things.
When the Crown were using this charge against you, did they ever use numbers of hookers that were supposed to infest your place? How many?
They claimed it be about anywhere from 50 to 60 that there would be prostitutes. But they're suspected prostitutes. They were never pointed out.
Suspected prostitutes?
Suspected.
Now, earlier on, Joe, you said to me, I, Joe Philliponi, am not a guardian of public morals, right?
That is correct.
Well, I'm a little bit of a guardian of public morals. So first to you, how would you solve this kind of nuisance of street and bar prostitution?
Well, the way that the laws are today, the way I would solve it is definitely in the streets. I would clean the streets out one way or the other. You'll never clean out prostitution because it's all over the world, every city, every town, every hamlet. You find one kind or the other. I would allow them without harassment to go into public places, bars and cabarets or restaurants or what, as long as the law is written there, they do not persist or harass anyone. Mm-hmm. Then I would make the management responsible for their actions in that manner.
Do you believe that, like in West Germany and other places, they should be legalized so that you can build a brothel and sell stock in the company?
No, I do not that all.
You don't believe that at all?
I believe that if a girl's inclined that way, if she goes to a bar and she sits there, minds her own business, and I go and approach her, buy her a drink, and we have a conversation, and out we go silently, that's nobody's business but ourselves.
Yeah, prostitution.
But if she comes to me, persists on that, she should be bounced out.
Prostitution itself is not illegal. It's a question of persistence and taking money for it, and a room becomes a body house, etc., etc., etc. How about some telephone calls, Joe?
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead to Joe Philliponi.
Yes. You know, it's really beyond my comprehension how this kind of injustice can go on against Mr. Philliponi. You know, people in Mr. Mayor's office and Jack Woolrich's bunch down there in City Hall, they're supposed to be the guardians of the public morality, but, you know, one really has to question where the morality is when a man has been cleared in a court of law, and they continue this kind of injustice, keeping his business license from him and things like this. You know, we really wonder where these groups are to protect someone's rights in this case.
You found a friend, and Joe thanks you. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Who, me?
Yes, yes.
Yes. I want to congratulate Mr. Joe Philliponi. I have been watching this whole mess scandal for past few years. And I was thinking, if it was a small businessman, what would he do? You see, he has to just get out of business. And you have really established, because you had money to spend, you had proved that those bunch of, politicians in the city hall and everywhere are just some nincompoop. And I want to congratulate you, Mr. Webster, for bringing up this topic this morning.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was quite surprised to hear your quote from Mr. Mayor. I remember hearing that on the bulletin. And what I wanted to say was, I'm quite surprised. I read in the paper that he said that he was misquoted.
Well, he'll be here tomorrow morning and we'll get his quotes dead accurate then. Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Philliponi,
Yes, madam.
anybody can see just by looking at your face what an evil, wicked man you are. And I hope they lock you up and throw the key away.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. What do you make of that, Joe? Come on now. Don't just say thank you, madam.
Well, it's just like bureaucracy. It works mysterious ways.
You've been around 25. Wasserman and I used to, when I was downtown on the odd night with my old friend, late lamented Jack Wasserman, we'd come upstairs and we'd sit there and we'd have one of your little steaks, and we'd meet the most fascinating kind of people that you wouldn't necessarily take home to mother, you must confess.
We had all different types, different kinds, and so on. As you know, that was known as Rendezvous of the World's Greatest Celebrities. And we had people like Milton Berle.
Oh, don't tell me
Sophie
you've got a
Tucker.
list of the names
Oh,
there.
sure. Here they are right
You were
there.
the showbiz restaurant.
That's Rendezvous of the Greatest Celebrities, World's Greatest Celebrities.
Sammy Davis Jr.,
He worked for $500 a week. Him and his uncle. and his
Lena
brother.
Horne, Jack Leonard, Joe Cap. But there's other lists of names that I've seen up there that neither you nor I would read out on the air.
No, but it was a public place, but it just shows you it was all types of people.
Leave me a copy
Yes,
of that,
sure,
will you? I'd like to have
sure,
that.
Sure.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, there was just one thing I wanted to say. I was thinking, if the police are trying to clean up prostitution, instead of going about it the wrong way, don't they ever drive down Georgia Street?
Ma'am, I'll be doing a little story on prostitution later this week in which I hope to put it into the proper perspective. More with Joe more with Joe. Joe, you're quite a social success this morning.
Social success.
How many people came to your club in your last good year? Roughly speaking.
Figure about 2,500 a week.
For 50 weeks a year?
Yeah.
150,000 a year?
That's right.
Half of them out of town, or are they all locals?
Well, all mixtures, you know, and so on. I know where they come from. But we had have an average of 400 a day.
If you get back to the restaurant license, you won't be having your Gina Bonbon won't be on, will she?
Well, it all depends. We're allowed entertainment. Well, that's got to be clarified what type of entertainment we can have.
You wouldn't want strippers while you're sitting having your supper, would you?
Oh, well, it was other. We have different rooms there, you know. We divide that up.
The which?
We have different rooms. Like we have the gold room downstairs, the restaurant part upstairs.
Yeah, but
2 floors.
will you get away with that?
Well, if you have 2 licenses, yes.
But if you only have the 1 license, you'll have to put your dining room downstairs
yes,
and a holding bar
all
upstairs.
through the building. Yes.
Yeah.
All through
With
the
a
building.
small holding bar.
Yes.
Because Woodland and the others may have been cracking down on these holding bars, haven't they?
That's correct, which is silly because what's the difference sitting at a piano bar and listening to music or anything of that type?
As I recall it, Mayor used the hammer on these people because they were not coming up to the 40% food allocation.
Well, no.
Too much booze.
No, he used to hammer on them. Well, that would be quite right in that respect. But the fact is that if there is food sold, why should not it be allowed to be sitting in the bar?
I'm going to go to the phones, and I want you to respond to them. You know, give them an honest answer, as you always do.
I will.
From Kamloops to Joe Philipponi. And when you, by the way, when you're talking to the telephones, look into the camera. Go ahead, please. Kamloops. Where is that person? Hello there.
Yes.
That's you. Speak up.
Okay. Joe?
Yes?
I would like to say to Joe that I've been to his clubs many a times.
That's right. We can hear you. No. Put her on hold. Would you give her the little standard lecture, the Datka Webster lecture, that if she can hear the television noise in the background, it creates instant paranoia and a mental block? Go ahead, please.
Mr. Philipponi?
Yes, sir.
The person that said they'd like to see you locked up and throw away the key, let me assure you I'll get one cut as soon as possible. It seems rather ridiculous, this situation. You're obviously being victimized, and councils seem to have their heads in sacks. The obvious way is to legalize prostitution. It's never going to go away. If it's legalized and the woman of the night has to have a license, would mean that the powers that be could keep a check on them, health-wise, tax-wise, and clients. It's their choice.
Thank you, sir. You're against that, Joe, as I
Well,
understand it.
I'm not advocating or profess to know about that talk about prostitution, the way it should be run, and so on and so forth. I have my own thoughts, and that's it. What I'm interested in is running an orderly nightclub in a legal manner.
Within the law.
Within the law, that's it exactly. If they make a law that prostitutes can solicit, well, let them solicit. If they say they can't, well, then we'll take all the steps possible to comply.
You know, what really caught up with you was the bad feeling which existed in the old days of the bottle clubs, wasn't it?
That is correct.
When
also the feeling that I did take a determined view of the fact that we would not accuse anybody of being a prostitute. They would not point them to us, and we would not go around asking if they were prostitutes or not in the club.
Had you taken legal advice before this charge ever came to see whether or not you could be accused of living off the avails?
I was advised not to put the figure to anyone unless you had absolute proof.
Go ahead, please, to Joe Philipponi.
Mr. Philipponi,
Yes, ma'am.
the sensible thinking citizens of Vancouver are behind you, and I would like to see you plug right along there and get right back in.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead from Quinnell.
Hello.
Yes.
I'd like to congratulate Mr. Philipponi on having beaten this formidable conspiracy against him. And I think that if the people were sportsmen at all, they'd give him his license back in full without any of this business of quibbling in regard to how many businesses can be supported.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in the Penthouse?
I've never been in it myself, no.
Never been in it?
No, and I'm not concerned about the people who do use those sort of places or whether prostitution should be permitted or not. I think, as Mr. Philipponi does it, we'd probably have more rape cases and things like that if we didn't have prostitutes. The question as to whether they ought to be legalized is another matter. But one thing I don't like is the vindictive nature of people who come along and try to crush enterprises like Mr. Philliponi's or anyone else's.
Thank you, sir. Well said.
Thank you. I like that. I like that fellow the way he expressed me, because that's exactly my feelings. And we feel that we've been wronged, and it is our right to do everything possible to make sure that this wrong is fully corrected.
Did you write that down just now while you were on the air?
Yes, I did.
You're pretty handy with the notes. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd just like to say I've been in Joe's club a couple of times when he had a deaf and dumb dancer who is fantastic. I went there to eat. The food was tops. I think that Joe ran a nice business. It was kept up well compared to other clubs that they have in Vancouver, which I thought were horrible and would never, ever go to. He supported the kids' hockey. He supported the kids in every way. A lot of that money went into the kids. And I got to say that I wish that Joe would get his license back because I think he deserves it.
Thank you. You've got more friends than you thought you had, Joseph.
Oh, I know. I got a lot of friends. I got enemies too, like everybody else. But if I can get 51%, I'm happy.
What about this vindictiveness?
Well, the vindictiveness...
Do you want to name the vindictive people? Would you put Mayor down as vindictive?
No, I think...
Volrich?
I put down Mayor and Woodland. I'll put them down as being two misinformed persons.
That's a good way to put it. Go ahead, please, from your point of view. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Webster.
Yes, ma'am.
This case reminds me of the minister in Ottawa that charged his 3 sugar companies with conspiracy to set prices. And that was thrown out, and he said he thought the judge was insane. Well, in this case, I think it's about the same thing, because the sugar companies have now been charged $750,000 apiece.
That was pointed out quite succinctly, and thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Oh, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
And Joe. I just a few things. The Woodland and the mayor, I believe, are just a great cause of all the aggravation to cabaret owners. And what really bothers me the most is the Liquor Control Board saying that no more C licenses for Vancouver because in this day and age, people can't afford to go out and pay $2 for a drink. So what they're really saying is that, you know, private enterprise is out the window. And if tomorrow morning I would like you to ask Rafe, Mayor, why the moratorium on C licenses? Because on one hand, they're very concerned about overcrowding.
2 things I've got to ask Mayor tomorrow. One is the moratorium, but more importantly is in what appears to be a trading in licenses, which was allegedly wiped out when the new Liquor Act came in when? Under old W.A.C. Bennett.
Yes.
10 years ago.
Over that, the new liquor, this liquor was just amended last year. Mr. Mayor, he amended the Liquor Act.
Yeah, but it must have been old W.A.C. that said...
It was my fight, as you know, for 15 years when McGugan was the czar of the liquor board, and whatever he said, well, that's it. No explanations, no nothing.
Well, I'm not sure that now we don't have a worse situation than we had under McGugan. I also had a license then.
Well, it's coming back to that point where some of these people are bestowed the power, they have the power, but they're overexceeding their authority. This power was given to them by the legislature under natural justice.
Joe, let's be quite honest about this. You can't blame civil servants for sensitive decisions like this. You've got to go behind the civil servants to the politician. It's very much like that case where I pointed out to Volrich that there was a hotel on Skid Road that was showing obscene pornographic movies. He didn't even know about it till I told him. You know, it was El Cid.
I remember.
But normally speaking, the Attorney General must have his, or in this case the Consumers and the Booze Minister, Mayor, must have his nose in it somewhere. He must know something about it.
Yes, but...
You know perfectly well that civil servants are going to go to Volrich and say, hey, we're thinking of not giving Joe his business license. We'll hold the meeting in secret.
But they're going on hearsay evidence. When it comes down, the chips are down, and they're asked to furnish the proof.
No, that's what I differ with you. I don't think it's a civil servant. I think it's the politicians who whisper in their ears, don't do it.
Oh, yes, they're coached in that respect, definitely. I know in our case...
Webster and Philliponi and some short, sharp telephone calls. Goddamn chintzy CTV equipment. Got it.
Do you want 2 minutes for an editorial at the end, Jack?
No. I just want to talk to Linda at the end.
No, he just wants to talk to Linda.
I think it's good enough to milk it all the way through.
Yeah, and then.
What do you want, about a minute?
Oh, I'll need to.
Mention that it's going so well, we'll leave Watson for another.
Yeah, we'll keep Watson up our sleeve. We'll put Watson on the back burner too.
Just so they know, 'cause he's been filming.
You've got 10 and a half and a minute to talk to Linda, right?
Yeah.
10 and a half and a minute to talk to Linda.
A minute at the end will do. Hey, Joe, this is going to be gangbusters, this television thing.
Oh, they're fucking 225,000 these licenses are going to be now.
Joe, you're not a modelist. You're not a modelist.
No, I'm not.
What's the most disgusting show you've ever seen in a cabaret in Vancouver?
Males dancing in the nude.
How many of them?
6 at one time.
Recently?
Yes.
In a pub?
In
Cabaret, don't name them.
Pubs and cabarets.
You mean they've got 6 naked men dancing together?
Around, yes.
And they closed down your place because a few dressed hookers might have been around?
Well, they said there was, what do they call it, corrupted public morals.
Have you recently seen 6 male dancers?
That is correct.
What night of the week was it?
Oh, all through the week, Monday to Saturday. They billed them right in the paper. That,
I don't understand it at all.
Well, neither do I. It's sickening.
Just awful, isn't it? Okay, telephone calls to Joe. Please keep them short and sharp and opinionated and non-libelous, non-slanderous. Tell them what you think, but tell them succinctly and don't give us, hello, good morning, how are you, is Joe there? Where am I starting? Chase BC is on which one? Go ahead from Chase.
Yes, Jack, as you say, to keep it short, Mr. Philliponi.
Yes, sir.
I believe you are victimized. Could you tell me, are you going to have any opportunity to charge off these terrible expenses you've had to the income tax department for one thing? I would like also to make the remark that they won't allow legalized prostitution, which I think that they should. And while the government is allowing lotteries, they wouldn't allow gambling. It's like being a little bit pregnant, don't you think? But just a little bit.
Well, times change in everything, as you know, in the 3 vices. They're finally becoming legalized, but I myself do not believe in having anyone getting involved in those sort of acts of that type. I do believe that it's up to the person themselves. If a woman wants to use herself that way, and there's no pimps involved or anything at all, that's her business.
But mind you, Joe, you would close down that place with the 6 male dancers, wouldn't you? You'd find that disgusting.
I felt sickening.
So do I. Go ahead to Joe.
Me?
Yes, you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when Joe said he got out of the Air Force in 46, so did I. What trade was he in, I wonder?
I was motor transport section, sir.
Oh.
NCO.
Oh, okay.
Lance Corporal.
Thank you.
What were you? Lance Corporal?
Full corporal.
2 stripes.
2 stripes.
Were you ever crimed in the army? Were you ever charged in the army?
No. Oh, yes, I was for speeding with a Jeep.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Webster.
Yes, sir.
Russ Langford out in White Rock.
Well, make your point.
Hello.
Make your point.
What's the difference between the law now, would you say, between now and Jerry McGear's time, or way back when?
Quite a difference in the police department. That's all the time we have to go into. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. I'd like to ask Mr. Philliponi if he wasn't, didn't have prostitutes around there, why, when I came to Vancouver in 1969, I was offered a job working out of the Penthouse if I wanted it, with all my rent paid and everything else by Mr. Philliponi, and it would, the girl that offered me this was living in a high-rise apartment in the West End. Her rent was being paid by him. And
okay, let's ask Joe the question. Were girls ever offered jobs where the rents were paid?
Where the rents were paid?
Yeah.
Never heard of it. Where the rents were paid, I don't know the meaning of it at all.
Do any girls work in your place who have their rents paid?
Not to my
Free
knowledge.
accommodation.
By whom?
By you.
No way.
Go ahead, please.
It appears to me that the city government has given up common sense for Lent. I don't know Mr. Philipponi, and I'm not interested in allegations and associations of the past. The city made its case, soft, ill-founded accusations directed in areas where government need not meddle. They failed miserably. Their persistence and further pursuit or harassment of Mr. Philipponi is tantamount to a criminal act, and they should, as any criminal, be held accountable for their misdeeds. Viva Mr. Philipponi.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I wish I had the command of the English language where you do, sir.
Are you considering suing somebody for loss of revenue?
I'm considering it, but I don't know if I get away with it or not.
What does Angela say?
We haven't discussed it to our sphere yet. We're going to get step number 1 first.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to say that I feel that Mr. Philipponi is misrepresenting himself. I had the opportunity to watch a good deal of the Penthouse trial in court, and the impression that I got was not one of a businessman struggling to do an honest business. It was someone making a very good living and living at the edge of the law and knowingly doing so. And I don't think that now he has any right to turn around and say, well, because other people are doing worse things, I was not doing wrong.
She makes a fair point, Joe.
Well, the fair point is this, madam. What law did I break?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
What law did I break? What law or bylaw?
Granted, it was a test case, at least in the element.
What law did I break, madam? I know it was a test case. It was. What law did I break?
Pardon?
What did I do wrong? What law did I break?
Well, I'll answer it for the woman. The Crown thought that you were so close to the edge that they decided they had enough evidence to charge you with living off their avails of prostitution. So the Crown thought that.
It's the same way they thought that, but then they did it deliberately. As a matter of fact, if you remember right, they picked up 3 prostitutes off the gutter 6 months after they laid the charge, tried to build up their case.
And they also put in policewomen in disguise.
Yes, they
and
did.
observers in disguise.
And there was nothing there that found that we ever tried to induce anyone or made any money off them illegally.
May I speak again?
Yes, ma'am.
I think the prosecution case, pardon me, was very poor in that regard, in that the prostitutes who spoke were poor witnesses. They just weren't speaking well. The 2 that I heard sounded, I don't know, maybe doped up. The case just wasn't well made, but you're not an innocent, and you've obviously succeeded in convincing a lot of people, at least on this show, that you are.
I'm not. I've convinced. I'm not interested in the people of the show or anything. I'm interested on the facts. They were presented and shown by both sides. The highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of Canada, whom I believe is more intelligent than any one of us here, they absolved us from any illegal action.
That's correct. You're technically correct in that, but you must concede the woman's point that for a regular church-going person who believes in total life without sin or temptation, yours was not the place where you'd take your granny.
Yes, there have been many grandmothers there, and they enjoyed themselves very, very much so.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't think that this woman's ever been in the Penthouse.
Have you ever been in the Penthouse?
No, I haven't.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, whether what that last caller thinks or not, I believe Mr. Philipponi has been found innocent of all those charges, and the city not wanting to give him back his liquor license. I mean, that's just a bunch of bull, because damn it, if you're found not guilty of something, you're found not guilty. If the man had his license, it's his living. He's got a right to make his living.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that, because I go back to the beginning and regard the initial prosecution. I know that for at least 10 years, down in the corner office in the old police building, they were trying to find a way to get you, and they never were able to get you.
Definitely, because we would break no laws.
Yeah, but they didn't like you.
If the laws are wrong, we're doing something, let them change the laws.
But they didn't like you, did they?
No, because I believe in standing up for my rights.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Joe?
Yes, sir.
I was in the Air Force with you in Jericho Beach in 1944, and I was across from you in the lower bunk.
Yeah.
And I want to wish you the best. And Jack, your program's terrific. Keep it up.
Thank you.
It's coming along. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Philipponi. You sit up there like a great big hero, but half of the people that called this morning must have been your friends. I think the police done a wonderful job, and this is a hell of a slap for the police. And
They should be slapped, ma'am.
scot-free.
They should be slapped.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Joe. I think he's been there for years, and the police and every lawyer in Vancouver has been in there. Or well, I wouldn't say everyone, but they've all been there. And I
might
can't
as well say
understand where
everyone.
they turned this churchy attitude on. There isn't. They used to have fraternity parties and everything down there, and it's just a bunch of nonsense.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Joe. Yes, you were found not guilty, and quite clearly you were. But what I was wondering, isn't it true that during the late 50s and the early 60s that you, along with Mr. Acey and Mr. Hildebrand, took part in a wholesale sort of a Roaring Twenties gang war?
Oh, no. I was around in those days. You've never been involved in that.
No way.
Let's leave that one. Joe, how old are you?
65 years old.
Not going to quit? How much are you worth?
How am I worth?
Yeah.
How much was I worth, you should ask?
How much were you worth?
How much was I worth? Well, I was worth about $250,000.
What are you worth now?
I haven't assessed.
How much are your lawyers worth? $250,000.
Yeah, well.
Webster and Joe Philliponi.
I get my pick.
With my rough voice.
Joe, have you got a headache this morning?
No.
Oh, I thought maybe your halo was hurting. Linda.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
Have you not forgot someone today?
What'd I forget? Patrick Watson.
Use
Forgot
it
all
tomorrow.
about Watson. We can use Watson again.
Right.
He's safely on tape.
Right.
What's for tomorrow morning?
We have our Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs, Rafe Mayer,
And Watson if we need him.
if we need him.
Depending on how bright Rafe is. But I got to use him before I got to use Watson soon. The problems with television, Joe. Quite a transformation from the old radio, I'll tell you that. So your next step is just to continue the battle, eh?
Well, I'm going to get that license.
The Cabaret license.
Cabaret
You've got the restaurant license.
I haven't got it yet.
Okay. Philliponi up at 9 o'clock in the morning to do the Webster show, and that's something if it's nothing else. Next, the news. Oh, am I out too early?